With the third pick in the 2014 NBA Draft, the Philadelphia 76ers select Joel Embiid from Yaoundé, Cameroon, and the University of Kansas.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of NBA Now. It's your boy Dom, and we're going to get right into things here today. So, today, I think clearly by the intro there, we are talking about Joel Embiid and kind of why, he deserves to be in the MVP conversation. I think this is something that's kind of been stirred up the last little bit here, the last week or so, and it's something that I think still isn't even getting talked about enough. I think when we're looking at a guy like Embiid, he's a guy that's had to carry his team without, the luxury of having, multiple other stars with him at that point, right? Especially you look at like Ben Simmons being out for the entirety of the season so far, and them still not, trading him or anything like that. It looking that they're not going to trade him, according to some reports from Woj the other day, on like how the Sacramento Kings, one of the biggest suitors for Ben Simmons, kind of pulled out of the trade talks and everything like that, just because they feel that the 76ers are being unrealistic. And Embiid is having a phenomenal year. I think when we're looking at what Embiid's doing, it's pretty hard to kind of look at and say, hey, this is a guy that's undeserving of the MVP. Now, right now, they are the 6th seed, but in the East, it's very, very tight between the 1 seed and really the 7 seed. I mean, Charlotte is only 2.5 games back from the 1st seed, where Miami holds. And with Philadelphia kind of being in that range, again, only 2.5 games back as well. Charlotte is 4.5. Philadelphia is 2.5. But there's not a lot like that Philly has to do to really hop into that top spot. Whereas, you kind of go over to the Western Conference and it's a little bit more spaced out. I think, when you're looking at games back, the Denver Nuggets hold the 6th seed in the West and they're 12 games back from the 1st seed. So to kind of move up a lot, it's a little bit more difficult in the West. And I think that's why, a guy who obviously I think everybody knows, I'm a Nuggets fan on this channel, but if you don't, I'm a big Jokic fan, obviously being a Nuggets fan, and I think he would be behind Embiid in the MVP conversation at this point because it's so much harder for him to kind of get in that must-have top 4 type of seeding where he can get that. And they both have similar things going on with them. They both have, rosters that aren't at full strength, with the 76ers not having Ben Simmons or assets for him, and with the Denver Nuggets having injuries across the board. I mean, you look at Jamal Murray, you look at Michael Porter Jr., and then just constant, little knickknacks to any other contributing player on the roster. It's very similar in the situations that they're going to. And I think this is kind of crazy, and we'll kind of jump back into the Joel Embiid Jokic talk here in a minute, but it's crazy how the 76ers still haven't got anything for Ben Simmons, right? When you're looking at Joel Embiid, this is a guy that I think coming into the league, we knew he potentially had a chance to be injury prone, especially with those early injuries and everything like that. And it's only kind of furthered the scares, in the playoffs and stuff like that, where he has been injured and stuff like that, where it's like, how much time do you have out of him? And that's always been the conversation between Embiid and Simmons. It's who are you going to... Obviously, I think it's clear now that they're choosing Embiid. But it used to be, who are you going to choose? Are you going to choose the guy that probably has the higher potential in Embiid, but he might not have the longevity that Simmons will have, or the longevity where he might be a little less than the Embiid, right? And for a long time, I always thought it should be Embiid. I thought you could get so much value out of Simmons, and that's really what it's tried to turn into, except for the fact that they refuse to trade him for anything less than heaven at this point. I mean, it's kind of turned into a thing that's hurting the team more than helping them, because you would think that a guy that well would help you get so many assets to kind of improve your roster, and they still haven't done it. It looks, again, like I said, that it won't be happening until the offseason, and that's a shame, right? That's a shame with the year that Embiid's having, because if we're talking about MVP conversations, this is a guy that's having 29 points, 10 rebounds, and 4 assists per game while playing phenomenally, right? Again, you go back to the fact that they're only 2.5 games out of first place in the Eastern Conference. If you're looking at, being in a position to have home court advantage, at least in the first round of the playoffs. Right now they're out of the play-in, but they are only half a game behind the Milwaukee Bucks, who are the 4 seed. So Embiid hasn't just kept them in the running, he's kept them at the top of the running, which is just kind of crazy to think about. And I think some of these teams that are in kind of the 76er spot with the Milwaukee Bucks, the Brooklyn Nets, the Philadelphia 76ers, will probably start to leapfrog some of the other teams above them in the Miami Heat, the Chicago Bulls, the Cleveland Cavaliers, all clearly playoff teams and, definitely strong rosters and stuff like that. But you look at it like a Cavaliers team, very inexperienced, very young. You look at a Chicago team, very young, not very young, but very inexperienced as a group, right? This is kind of their first year all together with DeMar and all the boys there. And then you look at the Miami Heat, a team that's been to the NBA Finals with this, somewhat core. Obviously, they've added Kyle Lowry, but this is still a team that I think always is going to feel like a dark horse because they don't have that Embiid, right? No matter how much you think Jimmy Butler is an elite player, he just isn't Embiid. He isn't Jokic. He isn't LeBron, right? He isn't Curry. He's a very good player. He led his team to the finals, but he isn't one of those guys. And so for Embiid to be having the year that he is and to still have them in that position, I think it really, when we kind of get towards the end of the year, it's going to be very close on if he can kind of meet some of those little thresholds that we've set for the MVP. But if not, it's like, dude, this guy is carrying this roster on his back. Now, yes, he's got Tobias Harris, and yes, Tyrese Maxey has really kind of done some stuff this year. But there's not really another player on this roster where you're like, oh, yeah, that guy is clearly stepped up into a star role. And Seth Curry, Seth Curry's been good for them as well. So that's, most of their starting lineup has kind of been there to kind of help Embiid in spurts and stuff like that and kind of play off him and stuff like that. But I think a lot of that also is a testament to Embiid in the fact that, he can be such a good player and let them play off of him in that type of way. But this roster still has a lot of holes. If you were to take Embiid off it wouldn't be a playoff roster. In fact, I think, comparably, if you're looking into the Eastern Conference, it would be probably the 13th seed in the NBA. Without Embiid and without Simmons, it would probably be the 13th seed in the NBA. It's not going to be better than the Pacers, and they're the current 13th seed, and it would be on par with Detroit and Orlando. Not a phenomenal roster. And so if you're looking at a roster like that without this one player would be a top, contending for a top 5 pick in the draft, a top 3 pick in the draft, it's apparent that he's putting in a lot of work. But also, when you have a caliber like that, player like that, you typically aren't going to have as strong a roster. But when you're looking at other guys in the MVP conversation, you're seeing Giannis soar up the rankings, I think, especially among NBA fans, maybe not quite among media yet. But he still has guys like Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday. So that team would still would be better than the 76ers without Embiid if you were to take both off, if you want to take it like that. And I think this year it's kind of a lot. I think a lot of that is being looked at more this year due to the fact that, with protocols and everything like that, you're seeing a lot of players miss time anyways. But it's like, what really is this team without their star player, right? And then I think, you look back over to the West, right? Obviously, Steph Curry is kind of, I think, lost his MVP pizzazz there. But this is, that roster is kind of similar where it's very, very deep, right? That roster would be it's better than Portland without Damian Lillard. And Portland without Damian Lillard currently is the 10th seed in the Western Conference. So that roster would be a play-in team probably without Steph Curry at this point. Just because of the depth, because of the development and all that the Warrior staff have been able to accomplish. You look at a team like the Phoenix Suns. You take off Chris Paul from that roster. I think now at this point that they've gotten the experience and stuff like that. I know initially, thrusting him into the roster is what made them that team that was able to go to the finals. But I think now that you've given them that experience, you've gotten more competent coaching, you've kind of develop some more guys that are, instrumental to winning, bringing in a guy like Jay Crowder, developing Bridges, and stuff like that, helps you get to a position where I think you could take Chris Paul or you could take Devin Booker. If you took one of their guards off the court and said, yeah, you're not on that team, this team would still be probably a playoff team. I think they're going to compete better night in and night out than Minnesota. I think, this is a team that isn't just going to falter like Minnesota tends to do, and like Phoenix used to do if you were to take him one of those two guards off the roster. And then, obviously, I think the big thing there is Kevin Durant, right? I think, the last time I made an MVP video, I said, look, it's going to be Curry and Kevin Durant down to the end of the stretch. These other guys, yes, they're trying to make it a race, but they're not really in it. And in fact, I want to say in that video, I had said that really it was only Jokic and Giannis that were even in the race behind those two guys. And I was wrong. And I think a lot of people were wrong because Embiid has forced himself into the race. He's made it so that he has to be in the race. And if the Philadelphia 76ers don't trade Ben Simmons at the trade deadline, there is no reason why, if this team is a top 4 team, I think Embiid doesn't deserve to win the MVP. And I think if you see him win the MVP, we're going to see a lot of talks of Embiid and Jokic continue to grow, right? I think I showed this clip earlier in the video of Perkins kind of looking at the two guys and the nights that they had. And I mean, I saw that the night that happened, and I was like, wow, these talks are probably going to start to stir back up, because it seemed that last year the talks kind of died off, right? With Jokic winning the MVP, with what he was able to accomplish with the Nuggets and stuff like that, with the fact that, Jokic has been to a conference finals, with the fact that, he's just continued to develop and make leaps and bounds in his own game. I think Embiid got put on the burner, and Embiid subtly did his thing, worked on his craft, and somehow even got better. This is a guy that I think is a Defensive Player of the Year caliber player. He's a MVP caliber player, and with him having the same record as the Brooklyn Nets, where Kevin Durant, if he's not the favorite for MVP, he's top 3 for MVP still, is, I think, notable in this conversation of the fact of, yes, we might, and I think seeding might even matter less in the award this year, because I know it's harder for everybody to throw it to a guy that isn't at the highest seed, but you look at like Russell Westbrook's MVP, right? I think he's the lowest seed to ever win it at the 4 seed. And shout out to him, historical year, I think he deserved the MVP that year. I know people will argue Harden and stuff like that, but I think, in my opinion, there's no way that with what we were seeing at that time, that it's almost disrespectful to kind of say that anybody else would even deserve the MVP in that year. But I think Westbrook's the MVP of that year, right? And yes, I think we could see a lower seed win the MVP this year. I think we could see a non-home court advantage playoff team win the seed this year. And the reason for that is protocols and injuries, right? For almost every MVP candidate that I have listed off, there have been major injuries throughout the rosters, or at least players not playing in the case of the 76ers. If we look back at, you can even look at like a guy like DeMar DeRozan, right? There have been a lot of injuries popping up on that roster recently, and they're still a top 2 seed. You look at a guy like Giannis, right? When him and Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday play, their record is outstanding, but they don't always play, and that's why they started off the year so low in the standings. I think they were the 14th seed for the first week or two of the year, and now they're back into the 4 seed. You look at the Brooklyn Nets, the whole Kyrie Irving situation, right? And then the fact that James Harden went from an Iron Man in Houston to now he gets these little knickknacks. We saw it in the playoffs where Kyrie and James Harden weren't available for Kevin Durant. And I think probably that's why they didn't win the championship last year. I know that's a pretty controversial take to say, but, a lot of people are going to lean on the shoe size. A lot of it is really health. Again, you can look at the 76ers, the Ben Simmons situation. It's not like there isn't injuries to other guys on the roster. And it's not like Embiid doesn't deal with his own injuries. So far this year, I think he's been on the court pretty well, especially, considering his standard that he's set, I guess, at this point in his career. But he's played 37 games. They've played, their record's 29-19. So they've played 48 games. Yeah, 48 games. So he's played 37 of 48. He'll probably play 65 of 82 if you keep that pace, right? And because of protocols and everything like that, everybody's going to be kind of in that range. Maybe we'll see a couple guys in the high 70s. But it's not like even the Warriors, right? Klay Thompson just came back, and right amongst Klay Thompson coming back, I mean slightly earlier, Steph Curry went and has still been on the worst shooting drought, the worst shooting spurt, the worst shooting percentage, whatever way you want to word it, of his entire NBA career, which is something to note. It's where he went from being probably the second unanimous MVP of all time, only following himself, to being a player that probably isn't going to win the MVP, even with the phenomenal start to the year. And obviously, I think the biggest, when you're looking at injuries, would be the Denver Nuggets and the kind of yin to the yang of Joel Embiid in Nikola Jokic, with his two biggest stars on the team, other than himself, at least offensively, going out. And with that being Jamal Murray, who still isn't set to return until April, and same with Michael Porter Jr., who went out with a back injury and isn't set for a return around the same time. So with them being out the majority of the year, Jamal Murray pretty much the entire year, him and Embiid are in such a similar position where their stars aren't there and they're still doing it night in and night out against good teams and bad teams. It doesn't seem to matter at this point. And so I think it's going to really, really get interesting. I think seeding will play a part when it comes down to the final nitty-gritty of it, of does Giannis, does Embiid, does KD, does Jokic, who deserves it here at this kind of final stretch once we get to the end of the year. I know it's obviously only the trade deadline at this point, or at least it's approaching the trade deadline. We're still a little bit away, but we're getting there. So I know it's only that, but I think when we look at the end of the year, we could see a 5 or 6 seed win it if truly they have that MVP moment and they've been through the turmoil that they've been through all year. So I think this could spark something historic for the NBA. This could be something completely different that we've never seen. And yeah, I don't know. I'm super interested to kind of see how it turns out for the MVP conversation. I think Joel Embiid deserves to be in it. And if not deserves to be in it at this point, I think he potentially deserves to be leading the conversation, just because of just the mismanagement of the whole Ben Simmons situation by Daryl Morey. Now, I think Daryl Morey is a very intelligent GM in the fact that he wants to get the most out of his assets, but to hinder your roster and hinder a year of one of the greatest centers probably of all time at this point. I mean, you're looking he's probably a top 15 center of all time at this point. Who knows if he'll end up top 10. There's a lot of great centers in history, but this is a guy that could lead you to a championship. And if you want to potentially waste an injury-prone guy like that, a year of his prime in which he looks to be one of the favorites, if not the favorite for the MVP, because you want an extra first-round pick, or you want, De'Aaron Fox instead of Malcolm Brogdon or something like that, where it's just like they're the similar level of player, but maybe you just need to work around it a little bit more. And so to not take full advantage of that, I think, is a misstep by the Philadelphia 76ers organization, and I think it will probably bite them in the butt. Now, we'll have to kind of see how things go this offseason with Ben Simmons rumors pretty much dying out at this point and it seeming that he won't be traded. But yeah, I'm super interested to see how that goes. Before I do end off the video, I want to say thank you guys for watching. I know this video looks a lot different than the other videos on my channel. I actually have been kind of working on editing this video for the last 6 hours, and I kind of worked on setting up some of the software last night too for about 2-3 hours. So I know I haven't uploaded in a little bit, but I appreciate everybody sticking with me. I'm going to try and really kind of jump this up here. I think I'm kind of at that point where there might still be the occasional older video where I'm just got a 2K game in the background and I'm kind of still just talking like I do now, but I'm going to try and kind of set this up. The big thing here, kind of changing the videos here, we'll just kind of see how copyright works with this. I've kind of tried this a little bit before on previous channels, and typically copyright tries to strike down a lot, so therefore it's going to probably force me to edit a lot more and stuff like that, which is a little bit more time consuming and stuff like that. So I will, kind of try and work with that. But I think what I'm going to, we could see color correction and stuff like that on the videos, just to kind of try and work with that, some watermarks or something like that to kind of avoid copyright. And if that doesn't work, we'll just go back to the old style videos. But I want to kind of test this out. I know, obviously, I think this is a higher quality at least viewing experience, right? You aren't just listening to me talk while watching a 2K game that I played. You're kind of watching like real stuff that's happened with Embiid and stuff like that, and I think it makes it more interesting. I am going to leave links down below to all the videos that I did use kind of in my video here, because I didn't like, it would be, I feel like, disrespectful not to, because obviously, these are different creators, whether it even just be the NBA itself that put out the media. So I am going to do that, and in any video I do like this, there will be links in the description to the original videos. So I hope we can avoid copyright and stuff like that and run with these videos, and I hope it doesn't get too stressful in the editing. But I guess that's kind of just the spiel at the end of the video I wanted to throw in for any longer term subscribers that are like, oh, well, this is a very different video. So yeah, with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed. It's been your boy Dom, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace out, guys.